We are starting off tonight by taking a look back to the 31st of May 1976. And if you're a fan of Euro-Caribbean disco music, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Number one in no less than 8 European countries, the second single of the debut album, Take the Heat Off Me, was the only true original track and would reach a certified gold status in the UK, with its digital release taking the song to 650,000 sales in total. We are rapidly closing in, though, on Boney M's numbers, as the chants of Shawnee Byrne continued to grow among the Raith Rovers support to their Daddy Cool tune. This is the Oh No 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 podcast. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and we're back to look at a somewhat frustrating afternoon at Starks Park as Barry Robson's side drew 1-1 against Queen's Park to take their unbeaten league run to 11 games. I'm taking the positives out of this one. I'm your host, Robbie Weir, and of course, joining me as ever, firstly got Blair Hopcroft. How are you getting on, Blair?
I'm very well, mate. Very well. Looking forward to exercising the demons.
And it was a good start on the Prediction League. I'm struggling to say that. It's a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, it was 100. I think it was 115 in the end. I think that's the biggest we've had, actually. So long may that continue.
Yep. And of course, got Leslie Maben. Tell us about your kit this evening, Leslie. It's self-explanatory, but you had a bit of work to do with this one.
Aye, so for those of you that are not watching, we have got not from the season we played them, but from the season before we played them, a version of the go-to Trotter Flag home top. So it's almost to the day 30 years since Raith Rovers started their European adventure with a game at home to go to a Trotter Flag from Faroe Islands. And I've been trying for a bit to find out a bit about the top they played because it was the only one that I didn't have in the set. And the actual one that we played from the season we had them was Unobtainium, but I've got the exact version we had from the season before, and from a bit of Facebook sleuthing, I've managed to get it all printed up exactly like the one that GoTo wore the season before we played them. So getting this out tonight, and you'll be pleased to know as well, the windows are closed, and there are, I believe, no gulls. So looking forward to a nice quiet chat tonight.
And I'm going to hazard a guess that you're not taking any requests for doing it for anyone else, just so that we can get this one out early and make sure that you're not doing any background work for anyone else.
Absolutely not. No, neither in terms of producing shirts or controlling avian populations.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Right, let's take a look back to yesterday. Of course, we'll always, as ever, start with the 11 that came out at 2:00. Blair, it's a return back to, as you rightfully predicted in the pre-match podcast. I was a bit more on the fence about it. I've, of course, been firmly put in my place. What did you make of it?
What can you make of it? It was kind of what it was. Scott and I had both kind of said. It was pretty much what he was always going to do. I was disappointed. I'll be totally upfront about it. I was disappointed. We said in the pre-match about how good Scott Brown was because he had Sean Byrne alongside him, how good Sean Byrne was himself, and just kind of what it kind of brings to the team. But Gaffer saw otherwise and reverted back. Felt a bit for Jack Hamilton as well, I have to say. I thought he had done enough to kind of warrant a place. Although Vonnie, I suppose, has had a pretty decent pre-season and League Cup campaign as well. I know he's not necessarily maintained it through the entirety of it, but it was it was a kind of a funny one. A strong team, obviously, so you can't really complain. But not really the team most of us wanted to see, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the reaction on social media said it all, just with a lot of questions being asked. Leslie, just for you, do you think he's Barry Robson making a bit of a road for his own back there in terms of the support going back to that one? Or just, what was your perspective when you saw the lineup there?
I think you've taken the cliche that I was going to try and drop in right out of my mouth, which was making a rod for his own back. I was not surprised, but I was a wee bit disappointed. I mean, I think the thing I thought as well, and I don't want this to sound disrespectful to Queen's Park, is there's probably not a huge gulf between Inverness and Queen's Park with regard to the composition of the squad, the budget they're
That's
working
fair.
with, and and I think, bear in mind as well, Inverness, if Inverness had beaten us, they would have gone through. So Inverness came and we played them and they were playing to win. So I don't understand why you would think a team that was so comfortable against Inverness needs to be changed for playing a team that are a wee bit better than them. And as I say, just for any Queen's Park fans listening, I'm not saying we had a right to go out and win, but with regard to budget, size, things like that, I didn't see the logic in making those changes back. So I thought exactly that. If it's the kind of thing, if we'd gone and won the game and been comfortable throughout, then he's vindicated. If not, he's done exactly that and he's made a rod for his own back. So yeah, I was not surprised, but I was a wee bit disappointed.
Yeah, it's. I know that the Courier had reported about Lewis Vaughan having a potential injury going into this one. I really think that with that, you've got to trust in sort of the data that the manager, and he'll naturally, of course, work with the physios and sports scientists and the like conditioning to make sure that he is okay. So I'm going to guess that they had the data there to sort of say, yeah, he's fit. And again, Lewis Vaughan, you never grudge him a start because he is such a good player and he can create these moments out of nowhere. But as Blair, you rightfully say, it's tough for Jack Hamilton as well. Just given the game that he had, the scoring a goal and getting an assist last week. Just right before kick-off, just to say that the minute's applause for Sean Dennis, brilliantly received. It was good to see the Queen's Park fans getting involved in that as well. So naturally, a fitting tribute to a Rovers legend, and it's as ever. I mean, as an away fan, you kind of go into these things. You'll see it from time to time where a former player's passed away or sort of club representative, and it can often be easy to maybe be a bit dismissive of it, but obviously you pay your respects. So yeah, it's good to see everyone getting involved in that.
Loudest one I've heard for a long time, I have to say.
He deserves it. Absolutely
Yeah,
deserves
absolutely.
it for everything he gave to the club.
Absolutely.
A really good tribute as well. Gordon Adamson on the mic as well, sort of speaking about everything that he did for the club and all his opportunities and things, coming back when he had the opportunity to go down south after Hibs, for example. So yeah, the first half starts. Blair, both managers after the game, I know that you're not one for post-match interviews, but they did highlight the pitch being relatively sticky. Do you think it's one that's just due to the occasion? Is there any concerns going forward with that? I know that we've sort of said, the club have said that the pitch is on its end of its half-life.
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
I have to say, and I mentioned in the group chat earlier today, or was it maybe last night, yesterday was the first time I remember noticing the pitch. Like actually being aware of it, not playing kind of true. There was a couple of early passes and stuff where the ball just kind of took a funny bounce. I mean, there was one that Paul Hanlon plucked it out the air. I'm not quite sure how he managed it, but the ball kind of bounced and skipped on quite quickly. I mean, it's a funny one. They'd obviously watered it beforehand, but yesterday it was hot. So I imagine the pitch has just dried really, really quickly. Whether it'll be as bad as it was yesterday when it's wet, you would hope not. I really hope this isn't the start of every week the post-match interviews being about a sticky pitch. But I mean, both managers mentioned it, so it clearly played its part in the game. But yeah, a bit worrying, I have to say. I mean, I know the Rovers were obviously keen to relay it in the summer, and there's a reason for that. But I think in a time where we're all quite kind of defensive about the plastic pitches being banned and stuff, I'm not entirely sure yesterday was a game in our favour in that argument. It didn't play off it well, I have to say.
I was on Twitter talking about it, and it's like flies to dung with the responses that you get from top flight clubs fans. Absolutely in there talking about how junior clubs are maintaining their pitches on a fraction of the budget and teams using plastic pitches are clubs like Dundee not allocating the relevant resources to maintain their pitch. And it's just a lot of arguments, but the number of people that fly in on you after you comment on it is pretty remarkable. But that mute notifications button on tweets, absolutely beautiful. Just silences all the noise. Leslie, one thing that Queens did do, they won the toss with the coin at kickoff, and they switch ends. Do you think that has an impact? I know that we talk about it as supporters, but the sort of suck of the ball into the net in the second half. Just what's your perspective on that? You're obviously watching from afar via Raith TV, but do you feel like that there is some sort of truth in that it does have that impact, or what's your perspective there?
It's strange because normally any manager that gets the team to swap ends and winning the toss has to be referred to as a wily old fox, because the only guys that did it with any regularity were Dick Campbell and Ian Jobby McCall. So to see Sean Crichton's team do it was quite unexpected. He's a bit too inexperienced as a manager to get the wily old fox tag yet. And I mean, whether maybe Queens thought that them shooting towards their own giant and vociferous support in the last 10 minutes would get in the victory or not, I don't know. There probably are, there must be stats out there to back this up about how many goals we've scored in different stands. I think Raith Rovers stats might have done those last season. But I mean, it's got to help to an extent for our guys if they're shooting towards their own end and we've got a big crowd that are getting behind them.
Did they not do it last season, but it was more in terms of the goals that we scored into the north end compared to the south end?
Yes,
it feels like ages we were scoring up the north end, but never into the south stand, particularly from open play. Blair, you look like you're about to make a very good point.
I'm just
it's all nonsense.
It's all nonsense. See, for me, the north stand, south stand thing, there is definitely a difference in terms of the stats and stuff. I think a lot of that's to do with the fact that we traditionally score goals in the first half probably more than we do in the second half, rather than we score more goals into the north stand than the south stand. For me, the explanation was pretty simple. If you were sitting in the south stand, the shadow from the south stand laid literally a shadow across the 6-yard box of the goal in front of us, and the sun was beaming into the north stand goal. I think the goalie just didn't want the sun in his face for the first half, is honestly all I think. I think it's back to the days of, has anybody bought a baseball cap with them and running about trying to find a hat for the goalie? I think I think that's all it was.
It wouldn't have happened in John McGlynn's time. That's all I'm saying.
There'd have been dozens of them.
So, the game starts. First for Raith from Rovers. It actually looked really positive for the first couple of minutes. Scott Brown having a shot blocked. Were you sort of hopeful, Blair, of that sort of maybe setting the tone for the afternoon?
Yeah, and I mean, to an extent, I think it kind of did. Scott Brown did really well, actually. I think he thought about putting his laces through it, and then he kind of changed his mind and tried to side foot it. And the guy got a pretty decent block, but we were kind of sat where we sit in the south stand. It was pretty much directly towards us, and there was definitely a space there for him to kind of loop the ball into. So I don't think it was a wrong decision. Well, I mean, it was, but do you know what I mean? I don't think it was a daft decision to try and put his foot sideways through the ball rather than sort of laces through it, because he's had a couple of goes in the last couple of weeks that haven't necessarily gone where he was particularly aiming them to go. But yeah, I thought we started really brightly. There was a good bit of pressure. I think it just took a wee while for the game to kind of settle down. And unfortunately, as we're about to get to, it settled in completely the wrong kind of way. But I think it's always that thing against a team that you're expected to win against. I mean, we were heavy favourites with the bookies in that yesterday. I don't think it's impolite to kind of bring that up. We were favourites to win it.
Yeah.
And you're hoping that look at last week. You get an early goal, and it's home and hosed and no bother at all. You're just hoping that you can get through the first 10 minutes or so, kind of settle the game down, and then try and take some control over it. And it just didn't work.
It's probably part of the fun of being a Queen's Park fan, that you've got all these championship clubs that'll look at them and dismissively say, like, they're just a team that's settled up by the money, or now, they're definitely going to get relegated. So you're rocking up to these stadiums. Naturally, they played at Hampden before, but teams with bigger home crowds than they're going to have for the away fans, and then with Lesser Hampden, of course, that'll in turn become its saga in itself when we get there. But you're looking coming in as an underdog to a degree, and you'll have that mentality as a club. As you rightfully say, Queens do gain a foothold though. And one thing you mentioned before though, Blair, I thought it was interesting that looking back towards, there was a ball sort of lofted forward up the pitch, and Fordyce was sort of staggered, kind of went for, he was going to go for a header, and then he had to back off, and then the Queens player nipped in, and that's kind of where they built their goal from, in the sense of the ball goes out, they win a corner from that, and then they get their penalty. Leslie, what did you make of the penalty shout, Blair? Just for me, that was more, looking back, I'm like thinking maybe now, was that maybe towards more the pitch, or depending on Fordyce? But yeah, again, obviously people have their opinions. I know Duncan we raised that sort of point, I think, last week when we were talking about it, as to whether it was a concern about like the defence maybe getting caught on the back foot, how much it ties into that. But yeah, to come to the penalty, Leslie, just give me your thoughts on it, and talk me through it.
So, the penalty for those of us that were watching the game remotely was a bit weird, because Raith TV were down to the bare bones, and the camera did not follow. So what had happened was the camera was effectively filming the corner flag fluttering in the breeze, and then the next thing we heard was that there'd been a penalty given. So I'd not actually seen anything, and with everybody in the ground being in the south stand, there was nobody who'd actually had a clear line of sight on the penalty. So I haven't seen the replay back. Cross comes in, corner comes in, ball comes out the box, pings about a bit, ends up at Scott Brown's feet. Queen's Park player comes in from behind, catches Brown unawares, and the next thing here is a crack and a shriek, and the Queen's Park player hitting the deck. It looks from the angles I've seen as if Brown has caught him, has trodden on his foot or something. The absolute dead giveaway for me is that there's very little protestation. So Scott Brown's arms go up now, but you don't have our guys running over to the ref. Bear in mind, we've got a lot of quite experienced players, and we've got a lot of guys who are often quite vocal when they believe they've been hard done by. We didn't see any of that, really, which kind of indicates to me that it was a penalty, and certainly from what I saw, it looks like it was. So that's what I saw. I think with the pitch, yeah, it's a difficult one. You can see it ending up being used as an excuse for everything. Whether Brown should have been more alert or not, I don't know. But he was caught napping to an extent, and the boy nipped in, and he's just caught him as he's gone past, and it looks like an open and shut case.
Yeah, and Queen's Park, they've got the more prolific of the two. Josh Fowler's done really well in the League Cup, but he unselfishly left the penalty to Michael Roof, the ex-Dumbarton player, stepping up on the spot and dispatching it home. Any concern for you, Blair, or are you just thinking there's plenty of time for us and we'd started reasonably positive? What were your thoughts, or is it just sort of typical Rovers at that point?
It's just such a weird... It was such a weird kind of atmosphere, because... So I'm going to sound really old here, but the young team down the front making loads of noise was great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was great, but it was really weird. Like, it's the first game where they've been properly in, they've got a wee megaphone and that, and they were kind of going for it, which was good. Yeah. But when the penalty gets given, genuinely, we were all going, is that a penalty? Is it a goal kick? Is it a penalty? But we didn't know, because there was no crowd noise, and obviously they had no crowd, so there was nothing for the other end either, and the players didn't really react one way or the other. With it being so early, you're not going to go mental and celebrate a penalty in the first 10 minutes, because it could come back to bite you would think. So that was a bit odd. Then obviously the penalty gets taken, and it kind of goes the wrong way. It was a decent penalty, to be fair, for Ruth. So you're kind of looking at it and you're going, right, better now than 80 minutes. Do you know what I mean? We've got plenty of time. We've probably been the more threatening of the two sides up until that point. So we just have to kind of get back to plan A and kind of get on with it. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, are they just going to sit in? And yeah, they did. for the next 80 minutes with 10 men behind the ball at all times. And I think that's where the source of most of the frustration came yesterday, is we either didn't have another plan for it, we didn't have a way of working through it, or we just didn't do anything quick enough, so we just gave them loads of time to get 10 men behind the ball all the time. So I wasn't overly concerned. It was, like I say, it was only 10 minutes into the game. But yeah, there was that niggling kind of doubt in the back of my head that this could become a really frustrating afternoon. And that's exactly what it panned out to be.
I mean, the concern is probably that the last... There's been a few games that we played against Queen's Park at Starks recently where they've scored one and then they've gone on to get 2, 3, 4, and then even 5, which is the main sort of point of frustration for me, that, yeah, you don't want to give them that opportunity, particularly on the opening day, because it just creates such a difficult atmosphere. I did notice quite a lot of comments about the young team. Very vocal in their atmosphere. I thought it was good at the end. I saw the I'm going to guess what term is the leaders working with Stuart to go through and sort of identify like what's happened and sort of pointing out that, because I know that one of the seats got broken in one of the warm-ups, like a shooting drill. So they were just obviously checking with Stuart about that. But yeah, it was good to see them taking that responsibility, which I do want to call out because, again, there's quite a lot of talk about them. I don't think the megaphone was possibly too well received across the South Stand in terms of a lot of people, shall we say.
We're a support that used to have a bugle until we booed him at the place as well. So we didn't really cope well with change.
And very, very inoffensively, the Raith away chants.
Bennett boys,
we're at home.
Please.
We're begging you, lads.
Bad.
We're begging you. But
Bad.
Again, it's just, I'm not going to tell them what to do because, frankly, they're not going to listen to me.
No.
So, yeah.
I thought it was really good though. Like they went for pretty much 90 minutes. Did create a bit of an atmosphere and stuff about the place, which was good because it wasn't really a game that was generating a lot of atmosphere on its own. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't getting you out your seat. So I think they did the best with the situation that they had in front of them.
Yeah, 100%. And they didn't stop as well. I think it's quite easy. We've seen games before where the atmosphere's tapered off or
things like that. Game when Todorov scored in the first 5 minutes, and that was the first trial, wasn't it? The singing section.
They had it on the far left minutes. Far left of the stand. But in fairness, you've got to give it a bit of credit as well because the club and this group of seemingly they're getting a bit more organised. You can see who the leaders are now. A few people commenting that they don't watch the games, but again, it's their own choice. If they want to pay their money and come in and do that, that's fine.
Fair enough.
But they're certainly seem to be relishing what they're doing, and again, just sticking up for them a wee bit in the sense that, like, I know that they've had a lot of criticism, and there is a lot of things to possibly point out
quite
about
well warranted as well. A lot of it,
100%. But you've got to also give them a bit of backing as well.
Absolutely.
So after the penalty, then Rovers are just set with the task, Leslie, of trying to break down Queen's Park. As Blair rightfully says, they come in and they're doing a job of sitting, defending, making life difficult. They're getting balls up to Michael Roof and Josh Fowler. Josh Fowler, very, very good at winning free kicks. And I don't mean that as a criticism at all of the guy. He was a real nuisance for Callum Fordyce at the back, in particular. Rovers try to maybe utilise their wide men, the likes of Paul McMillan. The only major, sort of, before we get into the chances, Dylan Easton goes down in the box. What were your thoughts on that one? I'm just going to be continually asking you about penalty shouts today, Leslie. What did you think about the Easton one in the first half?
Again, there wasn't a great deal of protestation, and to an extent, you do wonder if Easton's got his cards marked rightly or wrongly a little bit with referees. But again, there wasn't a lot of protestation from anybody. You know, in the heat of the moment, you're going to be shouting for a penalty. In the heat of the moment, the guy that's gone down is going to be shouting for a penalty. But there wasn't there wasn't a lot of afters when the ball next went out of play, which is what you sometimes see. Is everybody going over and getting their word into the ref, and in Brian Graham's case, actually, getting the book out and making a note for the ref in his book for him. But we didn't see any of that. So no, I mean, for me, that wasn't a penalty. again, the fact we were up in the other box was a heartening sign. One thing I'd picked up on is we seem to be trying to use him like a shorter and less hairy Finlay Pollock.
Yeah,
I'm not sure it's the best use of his skill set, because I hadn't
definitely not.
clicked until I watched the highlights back. There was a couple of times in the first half, Stevenson is kind of firing the ball long with the hope that McMullen latches onto it. One time he very nearly did. He did, and he just didn't compose himself, and I think went sailing over the bar. There was another time he got a header on something where that's one of the things I think didn't work, is we're trying to play to an extent like we did last season to good effect with Finlay Pollock, but it just doesn't work quite as well with Paul McMullen, and also means that McMullen isn't being used as well as he could be. And again, without wanting to speedrun through the whole first half, because speedrunning is something Paul McMullen is really good at doing, we saw that when he drifted out wide right a little bit later on. He got a cross in, which J. Rowe was very unlucky not to head into the net. So, yeah, a bit of a frustrating first half. We can see flickers of what we were trying to do, but there was a lot of points where it was eye-bleedingly dowdy, pedestrian, tedious stuff that reminded me of the start of last season and the start of John McGlynn's last season.
But yeah, aside from that, Blair, the two big chances really come. There's one for Paul McMullen, goes a bit wide after Callum Ferry comes out, gets the ball around him, but there's just really not much of an angle to shoot from. But then the closest that we do come is when it's the post. So what did you make of Lewis Vaughan in terms of his performance? Probably a degree of frustrating afternoon. But again, we'd sort of gone into the game where he'd maybe been a bit of a doubt. So
yeah. So, because that's the one. It was when Les pointed out, that was one of the ones I wanted to kind of mention. It was I don't like the Raith TV don't really show it particularly well. It was an absolutely incredible pass for Lewis Stevenson. Yeah. He just kind of zips this pass over the shoulder, and it draws. Is it Charlie Fox? I think the boy's name is, the centre half.
Yeah,
draws him in, and he kind of goes. And it's that kind of ball where the centre half's going, I could maybe win this. And it draws him in enough. He's got no chance of getting it. But it brings him out of position. And the ball just kind of drops over McMullen's shoulder. I think if McMullen has a left foot, he probably scores. But he's so kind of, and to say he doesn't have a left foot is no fair, but he's so right heavy. He kind of tries to jink it across and just doesn't really get going. But to be fair, to get back to the original question with Lewis Vaughan, the header in particular, I thought he was really unlucky. He takes it really, really well. It was a really good cross. I can't remember who actually put it in. Was it J. Rowe that put the cross in? I'm not sure. But an absolutely cracking header. Actually, no, do you know what? It was Doherty. Doherty broke down the right-hand side and whipped it across for him. And the centre half's kind of caught flat-footed. Vaughan gets a decent header off and is really unlucky actually to hit the post. I thought Vaughan was a bit frustrating yesterday, if I'm being honest, and I'm not entirely sure it's all his fault either. Again, playing Lewis Vaughan off the left, it just never brings the best out of him, and it kind of felt like that was the plan, to kind of have him. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I was criticising the starting 11. I think it's worth pointing out that he's not doing it, in my opinion anyway, he's not just doing it out of stubbornness to not play Byrne or to not play Hamilton. He clearly has a game plan, a plan that he wants to utilise and a plan that he wants to put in place. But when you concede 10 minutes into a game and the opponents literally sit 10 men behind the ball, that plan's not going to work anymore, because the high press, you can press as high as you want. They're sitting deep. They don't care. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to catch them on the hop because they've got no incentive to come out whatsoever. So I thought Vaughan cut a bit of a frustrated figure yesterday. It was a game that I'm not entirely sure he could have impacted any more than he did. But other than that kind of hitting the post, and he had another wee header in the second half, there wasn't an awful lot came of it for him. It was just one of the games where you're asking two or three individuals to do a hell of a lot to break down what is basically two banks at a five, where they just kind of sat in and waited.
Yeah, I mean, it would really change the complexion of the game, I think, if the header goes against the post, and it
Oh,
changes the
totally.
way that we look at Lewis Vaughan's contribution is, because
Completely.
actually, if he gets that goal, then it forces Queen's Park to come out, and they need to start looking for things again. Opportunity maybe for the likes of
Which is where
McMullen, as you
plan A
mentioned.
starts to work again, because
Yeah,
as soon as they start to come out, you've got McMullen and you've got Vaughan and you've got Easton bombing about the place. You've actually got a chance of getting in behind them. But at 1-0, it doesn't work anymore.
Well, that's it. That's it. 100%. I think again, it's the type of game where if they don't score early on, it would have been interesting to see how both teams adapt to sort of that and the rigor of it, and sort of how the game continues. You mentioned it right at the start, actually, even before we were recording, when we were sort of doing our notes for this. Josh Ray a bit lucky there as well, Blair, with a shot from Josh
Yeah.
Fowler that sort of doesn't. I mean, it's a very, very quick shot, but at the same time, should he be doing better with that? And
It's a funny one, because at the time, it didn't really feel like an awful lot of anything. But having watched the highlights, and I watched it back a few times, and the shot kind of does come at him relatively quick, but he's fronted it up. He sees it come in. The ball's kind of bombing about on the edge of the box, and the guy kind of slots it left. And I think it's Fowler actually who gets the shot away. And it's he's maybe, in fairness, and I would be as well, he's maybe expecting him to shoot across the goal to go to the kind of the more open side effectively. But he goes to Josh Ray's near post, which, I mean, I don't know whether that's by design or not, because it seems to be the one area where he's had issues. I think it's fair to say. It seems to be shots at the near post. He gets a strong arm to it, but he basically it's exactly what we criticised Monroe for last week, the Inverness goalie. He just bumps it back into the middle of the park. And if Ruth's paying attention, if Ruth's on his toes, there's every chance that just drops at his feet, like it did to Jack Hamilton last week. And all of a sudden you're 2-0 down. So yeah, I genuinely think he got away with one there. That said, he had nothing to do all day.
Yeah, 100%.
Nothing to do all day.
The only thing I could really call out, and it was a good positive. I mean, that's the first thing. I wouldn't be critical in terms of Josh Ray's performance, because as you say, there was nothing to criticise there.
No.
The one thing I did note was that there was a lofted sort of ball into the box at one point, and he was, for all the criticism that's been made of him in terms of sort of, particularly, usually it's from St Johnstone fans, so we're not putting too much credence to it, but he came out and he gathered it, and he handled it, and he held it when he hit the ground. There wasn't any spillage.
I saw one actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of landed quite
so
heavy.
That's the type of thing that you do like to see, that you do want, and it'll build sort of confidence in terms of the back line and the goalkeeper. Les, you mentioned it earlier on. First half comes to an end, and I think that was the word that was getting used mostly about the South Stand, just flat, pedestrian. We'd still had chances. We weren't by any means out of it. I think everyone could sort of see that it wasn't going to be one of the sort of, or you're hoping that it's not going to be one of those games where they're scoring 3 or 4. But yeah, going into the second half, the main sort of form of attack, it seemed to switch into aerial threats. What did you make of that? Rovers having across the game, well, we had 18 shots, but 10 corners, and sort of Callum Fordyce and Paul Hanlon using them. What did you make of the sort of change to sort of that?
I mean, the first half was pretty grim, as we said, and I think my concern, and this concern continued into the earlier part of the second half as well, is that there was just this big hole in the middle of the park, particularly with the back three. You had the back three, and then you had this big gulf of nothingness, and then we had a lot of players who've got a lot of capability up front, but there was virtually no way of getting the ball to them. And without wanting to kind of then just leap completely over the whole game and into the air preview, my worry with that, if we set up the same way, Jamie Murphy is just going to sprint through that. Somebody like Jamie Murphy will get 2 or 3 goals easily. But anyway, back to the game at hand. I was a bit disappointed that we maybe didn't do a bit better with the number of corners we had. We had a lot of them. And, we were getting, Fordyce in particular was getting his head on things, which is an improvement to where we were at the start of last season. It probably wasn't until about the 87th or 88th minute that we actually forced Ferry to make a save. from one of those corners. We're again, this is the thing we're missing to an extent. I think Jamie Gullen's delivery, which was getting very, very good at the end of last season and is absolutely a factor in how dangerous we were. And we've still got guys that can deliver good corners, don't get me wrong, but we're missing that to an extent, I think. We made Charlie Fox look like prime Cannavaro. You know, he was heading everything away, and I don't know if that's because things were just naturally landing in and around his cranium that he was just able to head them away. We were making him look absolutely imperious. I mean, he had a good game, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I thought I would have liked to have seen us certainly test Callum Ferry and certainly have a few more heart and mouth moments for the Queen's Park support with the number of corners compared to what we did have.
And for you, Blair, maybe flashbacks to sort of the last season, particularly the start of last season, where, again, a lot of the ball was going maybe side to side and then backwards. A little bit maybe reluctant to gamble on getting the ball into the box. Sort of is that something that you're sort of frustrated by as a supporter, or where do you stand on it? Or would you prefer for them to maybe be a bit more cautious so that we're retaining possession and just try to find maybe a better opening?
It's kind of, no, I don't want us to be cautious. We needed to take advantage of the fact that they basically, other than that shot that Ray palms away, they didn't really do anything all day. And they didn't have to because they were 1-0 up, so they were quite happy. Getting the ball into the box is a great idea, except that we had nobody over 5'8" anywhere near the box unless it was a corner. It was that lack of a plan B, that lack of what do we do if they just sit in, and it was like I don't know, again, if they hadn't worked on it or if they hadn't thought about it. I mean, obviously they didn't plan for going 1-0 down, but you're up against a team that are, for most fans anyway, the favourites to go down. You've got to be expecting them to sit in a wee bit. It just didn't seem to kind of pay off. I found the whole game actually really frustrating in that we just weren't very good at a lot of things. We weren't very good in the air, defensively as much as anything else. There was a lot of balls where they would go quite direct towards one of the fullbacks. I don't think J-Ro won a header all day. For a guy who's really good in the air, I honestly don't remember him winning a header.
I mean, his best header was, without a doubt, the one that just went wide of the post in terms of the chance, but that was an aggressive header.
Yeah.
But he definitely on the defensive side, I thought it was... he did struggle yesterday.
He really did.
Again, but we'll come on to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I thought Fordyce kind of struggled up that as well, and then it basically came that, like Les said, that kind of game in the midfield where they were able to knock the ball kind of long, headers back into the midfield, and we just seemed to have this big old gap, and they could kind of run into it. Like I say, it's a hard question to answer in terms of would I want them to put the ball in the box, because I'm not sure what they're aiming for if they are doing that. I mean, they've got a couple of big centre halves who are just going to header things away all day. We know the quality that Ferry has in terms of as a goalkeeper. I just felt we were, if anything, we were maybe a wee bit shot shy, which I know is daft when you've had 18 shots on goal. But
the other side of that is we only had 4 on target.
Well, that's it. And it's that thing of you've got to... I felt like I wanted us to pepper him a wee bit. Hitting a few shots a wee bit earlier, maybe, trying to catch him unaware. Everything just felt so, like we've said it already, laboured and pedestrian and slow. And I don't think that's a fair reflection on the effort of the team or the amount of work that they were putting in. It wasn't like boys were walking about. We were just a bit slow in possession, I thought.
Yeah, it really struck me as, again, I feel like it's very different to this point last season. I know that the results have largely been similar. Obviously, drawn yesterday changed that compared to last season where we lost.
Yeah.
But I suspect with the Airdrie game last season, that was so much worse in the sense that we didn't really do anything. Whereas we were still trying to probe, find opportunities. It's just more again, I think a lot of the time as a fan, certainly for me, with your players like your Vaughns, Dylan Easton, McMullen as well, add him into the mix. I mean, I don't think that we're necessarily, with McMullen, that we utilise him in the best way, playing him as a sort of more of a forward rather than a winger. But again, that's the system. You've got to kind of have that there. With it though, you just want to see those players on the ball, and I don't think we saw that much as much in the second half. Certainly until I believe it was the 61st minute, so half an hour ago, we changed our 4-4-2. What did you make of that, Leslie? Bringing on Sean Byrne, he replaced Ross Matthews, and then Jack Hamilton comes on for J. Rowe. So Jordan Doherty moves to right back. What did you make of the change there? And do you think the players impacted the game more, or was it the formational change that sort of saw Rovers be a bit more aggressive, a bit more successful in how they were handling things, taking away that man at the back?
Honestly, I think it's both of those things. First thing to say is I was pleasantly surprised at how early we made the change. And so I'd been a bit, as I can be, a bit grumpy about such things. And my prediction was that the first sub was going to be Kai Montague for Dylan Easton in the 72nd minute, and then that would be it until the 88th minute. So Robson had, he's clearly had recognised it wasn't working and had made the changes. And quite quickly things started to look much, much better. And it was a few things I think that helped with that. Getting Hamilton on with his physicality, getting Byrne in there. Also, Doherty, we know how good Jordan Doherty is in a number of positions. And Rowe, like we said before, wasn't having a great day, especially defensively and at right back. Wasn't having a great day, and having Doherty stepping out there, I think we just looked a lot more assured. We had a lot more options going forward. We didn't have this big hole. I think it was you'd said, Blair, in the group chat, the issue was Robson was fixing mistakes that he'd made with regard to setting up. So, but having said that, fair play to Robson at least for recognising he'd got it wrong and not being stubborn enough to wait until the 75th minute to do something about it. But no, I was glad to see the changes being made. You always get a wee bounce, I think, when you make changes, as it takes the opposition a few minutes to adjust to them and figure out what's going on. You always get that wee bit of a bounce, and we started to kind of settle down a bit. We looked a lot more assured going forwards. There were more options. There was more guys to move the ball to. So I think the combination of the change in formation suiting better the players that we had, and also bringing on the guys that had done well the week before, were both things that had pleased me greatly to see that happening earlier than it's happened in recent, and certainly in last season anyway.
And for you, Blair, I know you've obviously mentioned J. Rowe already, but also Ross Matthews. A bit of off days for the two of them. Do you think it's a tough situation in terms of balancing that as to sort of when you see players without throwing anyone under the bus, or what did you make of it?
Yeah, I don't know. Like Ross Matthews, he did what Ross Matthews does, and he was busy in the midfield, and he kind of worked as hard as he can, and he was running about and putting in a few tackles and stuff. I just felt it was one of those games where, because they were sitting so deep, we needed to be more fluid in possession. We needed to be quicker with the ball to try and actually stop them from setting up. And I don't think that's Ross Matthews' strength. I don't think it's his game. That's not a criticism of Ross Matthews, because he's very good at other things, but that's not his thing. So the Sean Byrne coming in, for me, made a massive lot of sense in that moment. And like I say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But if we don't concede that penalty in the first 10 minutes, maybe Byrne's never needed, and actually we go on to win that game quite comfortably. The game completely changed when they scored, but they did score. And we didn't really deal with it. It took us 50 minutes really to make that change, and then to kind of to make a difference. J. Rowe, yeah, I've criticised him a couple of times already in the group chat and stuff. And not really so much criticising. There's been a lot of plaudits for him. I'm not quite sold yet, I have to say. He's definitely a threat aerially in the box. He's very good at heading the corners and stuff, and he's got his 2 goals already. And fair play to the lad. Yesterday was not a good game for me at all from him. And I don't think it's the first one that I've thought, I'm not quite sure or whatever. He's not quite as aggressive at getting forward as I would like, taking a man on and going down the line and stuff. I kind of felt, and you get lulled in by the tape that ends up on Twitter for his agent or whatever about all the goals he scored and stuff. But he's not quite the bombing on fullback I was kind of expecting. Not writing him off by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely not saying he's rotten or I want rid of him. I'm just not quite there yet. So no, I thought the changes were really positive. I thought moving Doherty to right back, like I say, again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Doherty that put the cross in for Vaughan's header that hit the post, which was probably our best overlapping attack down the right that day. Do you know what I mean? And that's from our right centre half. And I think Robson had recognised the fact that the defenders hadn't done any defending for 20 minutes. Like, why do we need 5 of them? Like, maybe take one off and bring a forward on. It was a sensible change, I think.
Yeah, on the J row of it all, I feel similar to Lewis Vaughan in the fact that if his header hits the back of the net in that first half, it probably creates a game that's a lot more suited to how J row plays and just the way that he can get up and down the pitch. I felt like he did have a difficult afternoon in the sense of they were, for all we've spoken about his aerial ability, I still felt like a lot of times he was coming off second best in terms of headers. I don't know what happened in terms of that sense. But much like you, I'm not writing him off. I still think that there is a lot there to be positive about, particularly with the structure of our team. I think that overall, I'd say we're very fortunate in that we've got Jordan Doherty, who's just so malleable. It's like the Swiss Army knife for this football team because he just seems to do every single job that's possible. But yeah, with J-Ro, again, as you just to reiterate there, not somebody that I'm writing off by any stretch.
No. The next sub was even more telling though, because I think Robson recognises we didn't even need 4 defenders at that point. Because then he takes Doherty off and sticks Mullen on at right back.
Well,
because when he did that, we all went, Mullen at right back, what are you doing?
Yeah, that did seem to get a bit of a perplexed response in the South Stand. But yeah, just what did you make of that? Because he brought on Richard Chin for Paul McMullen, Leslie, and then as well, Josh Mullen comes on for Jordan Doherty. Feel free to correct me if I've got any of those names wrong, because I seem to have again be having a bit of a nuke tonight. What did you make of that?
We were at that point we were trying to get a goal, and I was delighted to see Richard Chin come on. I mean, I think you guys hit the nail on the head in that last podcast. He's an absolute box of tricks. He's an absolute box of tricks, which plays football in exactly the way you want to see a guy playing. I can understand why we're maybe not starting him. I can understand why we might have apprehensions about putting him into quite competitive and quite physical games, but if you're chasing a game or if you're trying to get something to happen, he's a fantastic player. And there was, again, from a different sport, and I'm going to get an absolute roasting for introducing rugby to this, but New Zealand have got a guy like that. The All Blacks have got a guy called Damien McKenzie, a guy with a mullet, with a blonde mullet of a guy, who's exactly the same. You wouldn't want to start him, but if you're chasing a game, it's exactly the same phrase, a box of tricks. You just do not know what he's going to do, which way he's going to go. So I was really delighted to see him on and moving the ball about very quickly, finding people in all kinds of places, especially Easton and Stevenson. And Josh Mullen, as we know, extremely dependable. You're going to get really good quality deliveries into the box. You're going to get some shots. You're going to get, you know exactly what you're getting. And you can see why Barry Robson calls on him time and time again. And it's he had a bit of a tough time, I think, especially under Neil Collins and maybe latterly with Ian Murray as well. He was not getting a lot of game time. And there was a point I remember last season, quite a few of us, including myself, thinking we were going to see him go out on loan at some point or be punted potentially in winter, but he's come right back in and made himself an absolutely indispensable player. So again, those were both very positive changes that I think set us up well to only mount the pressure on the 2 banks of 5 that Queen's Park were sitting in with.
Blair, you'll probably be able to relate to this because you were in the south stand and you'll have seen the curvature of the ball. But just Leslie talking about Richard Chin there, naturally very, very pacey. Lewis Stevenson played a pass with the outside of his boot, and I yelled, "Oh, Jesus Christ, Stevenson!" because I thought he'd shanked it well out. And then Sandy beside me just starts laughing because I'm then going, "What a pass that is!" Just fantastic. But I felt like Stevenson, Chin, and Easton in particular, they all seem to link up really well, just getting the ball, playing those sorts of triangles, particularly because we'd not really done so much of that in the sort of maybe first 15, 20 minutes of that second half. But then to be able to be a bit more aggressive, get the ball onto the deck, play the interchanges. And then, as you rightfully point out, to carry on the propaganda, was it Josh Mullen that got that ball into the box for the Fordyce one? I'm just going to double check.
I think it was.
Yes.
Excellent stuff. We love to see it from Josh Mullen.
He was great. Josh Mullen, like Les has already said, he's just so reliable. Like he comes in, and I know he's not a very popular figure. Like he's not. I don't know. Like I don't know if it's just that he's not fashionable or what it is, but he's not. I don't know why he's not loved more than what he is. He does such a good job for us, and his corners. That was for me a lot of. I'd love to know what the shot count was up until the 60th minute. You know how we had the what is it, 15 or 16 shots on goal or whatever, and 4 on target. 18 shots. I'd love to know what it was after 60 minutes, because it felt like there was a real marked change at that point. And then it changed again when he made the second bank of subs, because all of a sudden we've got this width, we've got the space in front of us. And you're absolutely right, Robbie, that pass from Stevenson, it's probably the pass he was wanting Paul Hanlon to give him half a dozen times before that, because we've got a really bad habit of playing the ball to the fullback's feet, whereas Stevenson just pings it 20 yards in front of Chin and is like, "On you go, son, go and chase it." And it just brought us right on. But yeah, great ball into the box, great header for Fordyce, who I think is not. I'm not entirely sure he's shooting. I think he's trying to get it just back across the 6-yard box. Not a penalty. Not by a country mile is that a penalty, and no game is that ever a penalty. So if you're here to hear us explain why we deserved that, we didn't. Not a penalty in this.
I did enjoy that. The only place that I've heard it described as a stonewaller was Barry Robson so far, who said that his players were absolutely certain about it. But again, you don't know if the referees responded to shouts, but it's
not a penalty.
Just with it,
I don't know if the referees, from his angle, if it just looks like, because the boy's on the turn, so he's kind of spinning, and it catches his outside arm. So I don't know whether he's thinking that he's thrown his arm,
it's almost like
to the ball,
almost like he's ahead of the ball, and then just catches it. But again, if you're jumping, there's nowhere that you can put your arm. No. Like if you're trying to jump any measurable sort of height.
Yeah.
But
in
fairness, I mean, we talked about the
mechanics of the body.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's nothing. You sent a photo in to the group chat, Robbie, of a still of that, and I'm like, shy of chopping his arms off. I don't know what you're looking for him to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talked about the first penalty earlier, and I actually felt a bit sorry for Scott Brown, because it's kind of bobbled about in front of him, and he's literally just gone to kick the ball, and in the time it takes him to bring his leg back and then forward, the boy's nicked in and Tobied it away, and he's caught his foot. Scott Brown knows nothing about that. Like, nothing at all. He's not kicking the boy. He knows nothing about it. And that boy, I don't even think he knew where the ball was. Like, to think that he threw his arm at it, I don't even think he knew where it was.
I saw a statistic earlier on across like the two competitions that we've played in so far. I mentioned this in the group chat, but like we've had double the number of the second highest team in terms of penalties so far. Peterhead have only had 3, we've had 6 so far. Dylan Easton, of course, steps up and dispatches it, as Dylan Easton loves to do. Just that record continues, and I know that we continue to hype it up, which probably means that it's more likely to end sooner rather than later. Yeah. Leslie's looking terrified there. I don't know if his computer's just frozen.
No, I'm not terrified. I've got a statistic. So since January 2020, I'm going to make sure I get this right. January 2023, I think. Callum Ferry has conceded 5 penalties to Raith Rovers. The first one he conceded was Willie Akio at Lardon, which I mean he did actually save, but Willie Akio smashed in the rebound. And then, it did at local view, yeah. He then was Panenka'd at Hampden. I don't know who did that, but yeah, Panenka went in. Then we had Lewis Jameson with that absolutely horrible penalty, which should have got football stopped also at Hampden.
So bad.
And then there was one with Easton, one with Easton at Starks last season, and this one with Easton as well. So there may be more that I've missed too, but that's the 5th penalty Callum Ferry has ultimately failed to save from the Rovers since January 2022. He is a great keeper, but he doesn't have a good record. Yep.
See, while we're talking about statistics, I'm going to jump to Duncan's defence. Missing a penalty shootout does not count. I'm sorry. It does not count. A run of scoring penalties unbroken is in a game. It's not in a penalty shootout. So I think Duncan needs defended on that.
Yeah, we were
just to say as well, I worked out
13 unbeaten.
Think about it like this: if there's a final, if there's a big game coming up, and you bet on a player to score in the game, and it goes to penalties and they score, the bookie's no paying out.
No.
Can't argue. Well, I'm sure they can argue that logic, but we're not ones to listen. We're going to ignore it all, and we're just, much like me earlier on talking about plastic pitches, I'm going to mute the tweet. I'm not going to bother with you. The game ends, of course, 1-0. The only other real chance is a Paul Hanlon header. And I think Fordyce has one as well that Ferry palms away. Probably one of the quieter games for Callum Ferry, all things considered, that he's had against us. Usually he's got a wonder save in there at some point that you do wonder how he's managed to do that. Blair, Queen's Park obviously come to town, and as you say, they put in a really workman-like performance. Any praise for them given the sort of circumstances that they've arrived?
Yeah, I think it's worth stating that sitting in for 80 minutes is hard. Like, there are not a lot of teams that will manage to sit in against anybody, having gone a goal up in the first 10 minutes and actively chosen to sit in, which they did, and can hold out. So actually, they do deserve a bit of credit. Aidan Connolly, I love that guy. Again, just Aidan Connolly doing Aidan Connolly things. He won all his tackles and he put himself about. And, when your team's under pressure, sometimes the last thing you need is somebody lacing the ball up to the centre half who's got 10 minutes to bring it down and get it under control and lob it straight back down your throat. So Aidan Connolly is the perfect example of what you need in that time. He was great for us doing exactly that, carrying the ball out of defence.
Yeah.
Running with the ball, slowing the game down. I thought he was really good. I had a lot of praise for the forward too. They didn't have a lot to do attacking wise, but Ruth and Fowler worked incredibly hard the whole game.
Yeah.
Never ever stopped running. Kept going. They deserve a lot of credit for that. It's a funny one because the games where we've beaten Queen's Park, and even the games where they've been a bit like rotten and you knew it was coming, there was always a mistake in them. I'm not entirely sure they feel like they've got a lot of mistakes in them this year. Like, I think they're limited. I don't think that they're not blessed with a particularly big squad of like seasoned championship players. They've got a few in there. They've got a few young boys. They've got a few unproven that kind of really are working to kind of make a name for themselves. But yeah, workman, like no real mistakes in there at all. The goal, they've every right to feel hard done by. Like they did enough to keep us out for 80 minutes, and did so pretty comfortably.
I listened to the post-match interview with Sean Crighton and I thought it was really good. Very sort of obviously aggrieved about the penalty, but also full of praise about Rovers in terms of, he said that Queen's Park worked hard, but also how hard we'd worked and how hard we'd pressed them. Just probably a fair reflection on the game. Leslie, in terms of your it was 4 draws other than St Johnstone absolutely pumping Partick Thistle up in Perth. 4 draws across the championship. Whereabout are you sitting with things in terms of your sort of optimism levels going forward? And what sort of lessons do you think we can take from this as Rovers fans?
The absolute first thing I think you've got to remember is the first game of the season, the first day of the season. You can get all kinds of weird and anomalous results, and it's really important not to jump to conclusions and do anything like fire a manager based on the result that happens on the opening day. And that would be a daft thing to do. And so I don't think Partick Thistle will be as bad as to lose that many goals every week. You honestly don't know, and it might be a few weeks down the line, but we're looking back at the Queen's Park game and we're thinking, that was an absolutely dreadful point to lose, an absolutely dreadful 2 points to lose. We could equally be looking back and saying, actually, on balance, that wasn't the worst result in the world. We simply do not know. One thing I maybe would kind of say though is I do not want us to go back to what we were doing with Neil Collins, which was starting games in a rubbish way, changing it at half-time, and then starting the next game with what we had then, and then changing it and kind of getting totally out of sync. I think we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater as regards formation. I think there are things that there's enough of a body of evidence to say that they do not work with the players we have at our disposal now. I think particularly up front, we don't have Jamie Gullen, we don't have Finlay Pollock. What worked with those two up front maybe isn't going to work, and that filters back through the team as well. So, there are a few things that we do need to rethink, but I don't necessarily think we need to go back to the drawing board. As I say, as long as everybody stays fit, we've actually got a quite nice number of options off the bench. So you looked at Queen's Park, and there was a lot of youngsters coming on, and they were getting weaker and weaker the more players they took off. We're able to bring in guys like Richard Chin off the bench. We're able to bring, it would be one of Jack Hamilton, Lewis Vaughan, Paul McMillan. It'd be one of those guys be able to come off the bench, Josh Mullen. We've got quality, as long as everybody's fit, that can come on and help us to sustain that for 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's all comments that I can completely understand. I think that naturally, with the way that things are for Richard Chin, I think the hype's going to continue to grow. He obviously wasn't as Ronaldinho-esque, shall we say, in his performance compared to when he was against Cali, and we were obviously cruising that game. But he still came on and he did have a very good impact. Josh Mullen, as Blair rightfully said earlier on, the impact that he's had, being able to set up what eventually was the penalty, and just a very assured performance in a game, a point where we were chasing a game and not a lot was coming off for us, to be able to have that impact, well worth calling out. And then you add in the likes of Sean Byrne, the composure that he's brought, and Jack Hamilton being a bit of a focal point. I feel like that was really valuable. So, Robson's got the options there. Whether he chooses to utilise them or how he goes about, I suspect it's probably going to be not the case going into next week. But again, we'll have a pre-match podcast to talk about that. Blair, for you, what were your thoughts coming away from this one in terms of sort of the championship overall, and just your sort of where are you at in terms of, was there anything in terms of the other results that stuck out for you from the weekend? Whether it's Ayr United losing a late goal up at Arbroath, Ross County collapsing against Airdrie, Partick Thistle maybe not as strong as people thought?
Yeah, kind of the championship, we said already, the championship's that league where everybody can beat everybody. Disappointed with Ayr, I have to say, on Friday night. I didn't think they were very good at all. I don't think that's the Ayr that we'll see down at Somerset next week. I thought Arbroath actually looked pretty good. They worked really hard. Again, another workman-like performance, but actually with a lot of quality in there as well. I thought they were well worth their point, and actually probably had grounds to feel a bit hard done by to only come away with a point. Ross County, it's a funny one. 2-0 up. But I've obviously not watched the highlights or anything, but I saw the Duncan had stuck in the clip that somebody put on Twitter of the first Airdrie goal. What on earth were Ross County doing? They were so deep. Just like it looked like Queen's Park. It was like 10 men behind the ball. I'm like, you're at Airdrie and you're your money bags Ross County. Thought that was a strange one. Dunfermline and Morton, 0-0. It's pretty much written in the stars, that one. Partick's a funny one. I think we kind of will hold fire on what that was, because I have a sneaking suspicion Ross County are going to walk this league. I just feel like them and Ross County both have the money and they both have the big squads, but I just feel like St Johnstone have got fewer mistakes in them. They just feel more steady, like they're just going to
cohesive.
Yeah. Though I think they'll 1-0, 2-0 their way through the entire season, and every so often they'll do what they did yesterday. They'll absolutely pump somebody. A wee bit like what Dundee United did the year that we kind of ran them close. Like, I think in any other season, had we not had the season we had, Dundee United would have been home and hosed with the performances they put in and the score lines that they put in. Do you know what I mean? They were beating all the wee teams around them. They struggled a wee bit against us and a couple of the other teams, Dunfermline in particular. But basically, they were just pretty steady throughout the season and picking up points when they needed to. I kind of feel like St Johnstone are going to do the same thing. So Partick, I'll hold fire just now. I want to see them another 2 or 3 results before we kind of get a feeling for where they're at. Because, I do think St Johnstone are going to be particularly good this year.
Yeah, for me, with Don Cowie, I think the quicker that Ross County get rid of him, the chance will be stronger of them winning the league. Because I think the longer it goes, particularly with St Johnstone and the depth that they've got, I feel like there is a chance that St Johnstone might just develop a league that's unassailable, kind of like Falkirk did in the sort of in the earlier stages of the first half of the year. Naturally, it didn't come to pass in the second half, but yeah, just for the championship as a whole, I feel like naturally next week's going to be the big acid test for us, because it's not going to be 10 men sitting behind the ball. If Ayr score 1, they're going to go for 2 and 3. We've seen that with Barry Robson's debut. They'll feel confident about that. But at the same time, how many other players are coming back? So again, all discussion for later on this week. So we'll park that one for now. We will be back with you then. Just before we go, Leslie, any contenders for man of the match for this one that stood out for you?
That is a difficult one. That's a really difficult one. I mean, it's not like nobody was rotten. Nobody was absolutely terrible. By the same token, nobody was particularly good either. Whoever was in the stadium, it was announced that Easton was man of the match. That was probably for the penalty, and also the fact that, as he always does, he is always trying to make things happen. I'm actually really hard pressed. I'm almost tempted to say Paul McMullen, just for the crosses he was putting in and for the effort and the endeavour. But beyond him and Easton, while I've got the airtime, I'm also going to say, if you haven't watched the post-match yet, have a watch. Barry Robson. I have never seen a man get so excited and animated about talking about people going down with cramp. It's the most Barry Robson thing ever. Exactly. Properly, actually, out of his seat, gesticulating about people going down with cramp through exhaustion. So, yeah, difficult one. McMullen or Easton for me.
Blair, who was your suggestion for man of the match?
I'd agree with Les. It's slim pickings. I'd probably go Doherty, just steady, did his job. He was good. There was flashes of kind of good stuff from him throughout the game. But for me, it was probably between him and McMullen were the only two that kind of, the only two that kind of really came through the game with proper pass marks. Easton was fine. It was, again, a bit of a frustrating game for him. He kept going and he kept plodding away. But like I said at the beginning of the show, it was a really frustrating day because they just set in and we didn't really know what to do. And just a bit of a frustrating one for all of our attacking players, to be fair.
Yeah, I would agree with you in terms of Doherty getting the man of the match. I thought for me, again, just to go into the two positions that he's done, he looked very assured on the ball, trying to get forward as well. Those underlaps that he's trying to do, getting on the pitch as well. We saw a lot of it in the first half. So, yeah, he would be my choice for man of the match. Yeah, we'll be back later on in the week for a preview for our trip to Somerset Park, so we'll discuss everything that's going on with them. We might have some news about the cooperation agreement. I know that the vote closed yesterday evening, so
Oh yeah, that's right, last night.
well, again, whether it's going one way or the other, we can come back and chat about it. It has been quite interesting to watch all the discussion about it, a lot of the chatter about it. One thing I would say is that whatever way you vote, I think the best thing is just to be respectful of other people as well. We've had a lot of chats in our group chat, people voting either way. We've had a lot of discussion, but again, ultimately, at the end of it, you're all Rovers fans. So hopefully there's not any verbals getting chucked out left, right or centre when the vote gets announced. So,
on a more positive note, the prediction league is up already. I'm going to try and stick to getting it up on a Sunday, so that we've got a week to get them in. So, yeah, get your predictions in.
It's a big commitment, Blair. It's not the easiest
thing. It's because
I'm
only going to do the league. I'm going to do the league table like once a month or something, because it's the bit that's a total pain in the hoop. It takes ages. So yeah, I'm gonna get it. Try and stick to getting it up every Sunday.
And there's always someone out there asking a question about the points that they've got.
God, every time.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time to listen. So yeah, as ever, we will see you for the air preview. But bye for now.